Evening, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for attending this meeting of the Governance Committee on Tuesday, 30th November 2021. Before we start this evening, I'd just like to outline some housekeeping rules. There are no planned fire alarms, so if it does sound, please leave via the emergency exits. Can I request that all mobile phones are kept on silent and switched off? Thank you. Members of the committee are attending in person here at the Civic Centre with officers. Our external auditors are present on Teams. Other members of the council may also dial in to the meeting via Microsoft Teams to observe and or participate in the meeting, and I think it's on YouTube as well. Only members of the committee present at the Civic Centre are entitled to vote. Please note this meeting is recorded and live streamed on YouTube. The web link for that is displayed on the agenda for the meeting, which can be found on the council's website. Members on Teams are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. Could I remind members to unmute themselves once they have finished speaking to enable the meeting to proceed smoothly? Okay, mute, unmute were the two words said most of all this last year, aren't we? Okay, so with that, we'll move on to item 1 and apologies. We've had apologies from Councillor Turner. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. If a committee member has a pecuniary interest, they're requested to leave the meeting completely. The member can rejoin the meeting following the completion of the item in question. Does anyone have any interest to declare? No, thank you. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting. So I've got the minutes of the last meeting in front of me for approval.
Chair, I think Georgia wanted to come in at that point.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
At which point?
Declarations of interest.
Okay, sorry, Georgia.
That's okay, thank you, Chair. So it was just that you have an item on the agenda, appointment of external auditors. So I'm happy to kind of leave the meeting at that point or, stay, but I'll take the committee's view on that.
Some advice on that?
We don't think it's an issue, to be honest. If I don't see any really issues or problems emerging.
Okay, Georgia, sounds like you're okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to the minutes. Are there any points of accuracy on the minutes that anybody wants to raise, or can we propose the minutes for approval? I'll propose those for approval. Seconded by Councillor Sharples. Thanks very much. Takes us swiftly on to item 4, audit progress report and sector update. Members are advised that this item can be found starting on page 7 of the agenda. And I'm going to invite Georgia Jones from Grant Thornton to present this item. Thanks, Georgia.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is the regular progress update report that we bring to members, and it's really just to update you on anything that's kind of changed since we last reported to you. So members will recall at the previous governance committee that we brought our audit findings report, and at that point we were just finalising a few various testing areas on the accounts and just finalising our reporting. So this report really just confirms that the opinion has been given on the council's financial statements, and we gave an unqualified opinion on the financial statements on the 5th of November. So members will also recall that our value for money work is ongoing. So the financial statements work is complete, but the value for money work is ongoing. That is on a later timetable than the financial statements work. So we're continuing to work on that with a view to reporting back to members in our auditor's annual report at the next committee meeting. So that was all just really set out on page 10 of the agenda for you. The following page is really just a general update on other areas, just to confirm that we do continue to meet officers of the council to discuss any emerging issues, and just that the certification work that we do for the council will be starting shortly as well to meet the deadline of the end of January for that particular piece of work. The following page, page 12 of the agenda, just sets out our deliverables and just confirms to you in terms of the audit findings report and the opinion they've been given and the timetable for the VFM work. The remainder of the report is just our sector update, just information for members, the various reports you might find of interest. So that was really all I intended to say, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Georgia. Okay, thanks for that. So do we have any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, just interested in the new approach to value for money, and I'm looking on page 15 of the report. How financial and performance information has been used to assess performance to identify areas for improvement. In relation to the new form of reporting value for money, could you clarify, for example, where capital projects have had a significant overspend from the original budget authorised? Would you view that as being detrimental to value for money?
So as you'll be aware, Councillor, sorry, I'm getting some feedback. Thank you. So yeah, as you'll be aware, the value for money work, it doesn't give a view on whether the council provides value for money. It gives a view on whether the council has the arrangements in place in order to deliver value for money. So slightly kind of subtle distinction there. So we're looking at the arrangements in place. So the capital projects would come under a number of kind of areas. So part of it would be financial sustainability. So how those projects are run, how they're reported on, how they're monitoring. So if capital projects, for example, overran, a key thing would be how soon was that overrun identified, what actions were taken to correct it, you know, what was the reasons behind it. So that's the sort of thing we would look at. So I guess kind of put very simply, it would be more worrying if that overrun was only identified right at the end of the project rather than if it was identified early in the terms of the project and something was done about it. So that's the kind of thing that we look at, and we will make our decision kind of around really those arrangements and how they've been put into place. Another key thing is that the council has actually adhered to its own policies and procedures. So if there was something about a capital project where the council hadn't, adhered to its own decision-making procedures and its own kind of procurement procedures, then again, that's something we would report back on. So it's quite a kind of like wide-ranging different aspects around that. So I don't know if that's kind of helped or answered your question at all.
No, that's fine. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. Any other questions? Councillor Bretherton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was an interesting comment that you made about the value for money is more about the arrangements in place rather than looking at. We had a training session the other day, and when they were talking about value for money, they seemed to be referring to financial matters. But from your point of view, you're looking at the arrangements in place rather than value for money, as we probably understand it. It was interesting. There's a few points made I found quite interesting. On page 17.4, it says not all authorities exercise appropriate care with public money. Page 23, there was a comment: councils given more power to build more homes through the right to buy receipts. Could you maybe just clarify a bit more what that refers to? Councils given more power to build homes through the right to buy receipts.
So my understanding, sorry, I'm echoing again. Can you switch off your mic? Thank you, sorry. Apologies. Yes, so in terms of some councils retain their kind of what's called a housing revenue account, so that what used to be kind of, I guess, council houses. So as you'll be aware, a lot of councils that's gone out to kind of social housing associations, but there are a few councils who still retain the council houses themselves and run that themselves. And you'll be aware as well that, some time ago, tenants were given right to buy those council houses. And so councils who do retain them, the receipts from those right to buy sales, they can be used in certain ways set out by statute, and kind of that is referring to kind of the rules around that and the potential to use those receipts to kind of take forward building kind of new social housing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting comment. I suppose councils in general need to be careful if they're planning to build social housing, and if the tenants then buy them at a substantial discount to what they cost, for example. But then the council uses the reduced amount to go and build more social housing, and then it could have a knock-on effect where effectively we could lose the social homes, and the value that we have to build them could plummet quite significantly. Have you ever come across any councils that might have experienced that in the past?
I've not personally come across anything of that nature. And there are very kind of strict rules around kind of the use of the receipts and kind of, you know, the sale of the houses and the valuation as well. They're valued in a certain way, council houses, not like you would value a normal house on an open market. So there are quite a lot of kind of statute and rules in place to make sure that those things are governed quite tightly. So I've not come across that personally. But, you know, you referred earlier as well to kind of, within the report as well is kind of, we've issued quite a few public interest reports lately in terms of kind of different things councils have done. I'm not saying in particular to kind of social housing and right to buy, but obviously councils are kind of branching out into different schemes these days. So, you know, it is kind of incumbent on councils to make sure that they do kind of follow the rules set down and also their own decision-making processes to make sure that that governance and that kind of scrutiny is in place.
Yeah, thank you. I suppose that falls under the comment that not all authorities exercise appropriate care with public money, and I suppose it's a very important area that councils need to be aware of. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your explanation.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Any other questions from members on the committee? Okay, members not on the committee? No? Well, thanks for that. That covers this item. It's to note, so there's no vote required. Thanks for that, Georgia. Takes us on to item 5, the appointment of external auditors, and the members are advised that this item can be found starting on page 25 of the agenda. Dawn's going to present this item. Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you, Chair. So the report you have before you sets out the options available to the council for the appointment of an external auditor from 2023 onwards. Following the abolition of the Audit Commission back in 2018, the council opted into the national scheme run by the PSAA, which is the public sector audit appointments. And that's the approach that we took last time. So we're now at the position where we've come to the end of that period of time that covered, and we have options available to us at how we progress. So the options are set out on page 26, and we are recommending that we take the decision to opt into the national scheme as it's considered the best option available to us. The reasons for that are set out in paragraph 9 of the report and are further endorsed by the comments made by the Statutory Finance Officer. It has to be, if we decide to take the decision to opt into the scheme, it has to be a decision of full council. So we're asking the committee to make that recommendation to full council.
Thanks very much, Dawn. Any questions for Dawn from members of the committee? Councillor Smith. Thank you.
I've read this with interest, and I think the way forward is to go with the PSAA. But I was just interested in how they actually go about their business. Do they then go out to tender? And once they've got the tender, how then do they allocate which audit firm would actually come to us? Do we just get a choice, or is it just that's who you're getting?
It is like you said, they take on everybody who have to opt in, so we have a date by which we have to confirm to them that we would like to opt into the scheme. They run, like you say, a procurement exercise. They identify the firms that are available, and then they allocate us a firm.
So will there be a number of firms, and how will they actually allocate them? Are they done on what sort of basis are they actually allocated on?
But if I recall from last time, the way they tried to do it was geographically, in that they try to group the audit firms with a number of local authorities in the same area. So that's the way they get the best value. rather than us dealing with an audit firm that's not situated relatively near to us.
Thanks for that. Any other questions? Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, I'm not a question, just a comment. I was chair of this committee when it went through last time round, and I don't see any reason to progress in any different way at this point in time.
Thanks for that, Alan. Any other questions or comments, members on the committee? Members not on the committee? Gary? Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think what we will find this time round is that the procurement is different than last time. There was a lot of emphasis, I think, on price. Last time it drove a lot of costs out of the system. There's quite a lot of ongoing work looking at the quality of audits and the resources required to do quality audits. So I do expect this time that the process and the outcome will be different than last time.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, so if there aren't any other comments or questions, the committee are asked to recommend to council to opt into the public sector audit appointments national scheme, the appointment of the external auditor. So we need to take a vote on this. Is anybody going to vote against this? No. Excellent. That's unanimous then. Thanks, Carol. Formally, I'll propose it. Will somebody second that? Thanks very much. Thanks, Carol. Which takes us on to item 6, the Treasury Management Activity Mid-Year Review 2021 to 2022. And members are advised that this item can be found starting on page 29 of the agenda. And I'm going to invite James Thompson to present this. Thanks, James. Oh, it's Tony. Oh, Tony, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Well, yes, it's the regular half-yearly Treasury Management Report. The immediate theme to pick up is that both in cash flow terms and in the level of interest that we're earning on our investments, what investments are available to us, the continuing effects of the pandemic are still very much visible. In cash flow terms, we continue to have very high, relatively levels of cash balance, an average of £54 million in the first half of the year, and actually we're currently standing at over 60 million. So that will tail off before the end of the year. But yes, the balances do continue to be very high. Also, the very, very limited investment opportunities, because it continues to be the case that other councils also have rather more cash than they would usually have. So relatively fewer of them are looking to borrow money. So there is a limit on quite how much we can place, where, and for how long. And then linking to the level of interest that we have earned, well, the average for the first 6 months of the year was a quite majestic 0.11%. And I have to say I'm really becoming more and more paranoid about this, because it seems that every year I come back and say, I'm sorry that the average earned is so low, and then I'm back 12 months later to say, well, it's even lower. Perhaps next year it'll be a different picture. So having said, it is just that 0.11%. If we refer across to paragraph 14, is it? We have a target rate of interest of 0.1%. So we have actually exceeded that, not by much, but to exceed it at all in the circumstances is something of an achievement. So to give you an idea of the current state of the market, coming up towards the end of the half year, if you were looking to place money for 4, 5, 6 months, never mind 0.1%, you were actually fairly lucky to hit an opportunity for half of that, and perhaps even less. So the other main development is referred to in paragraph 21 and is set out in detail at Appendix E, and that is that expectations in terms of quite what the bank rate is going to do have changed fairly significantly since the beginning of the year. The expectation was that we were looking at 0.1% for quite some time to come, perhaps 2-3 years into the future. The expectation now is that the rate is going to increase very soon. Now, at the time this report was published, the expectation still, I think, was that that was potentially going to be before Christmas. That's now maybe become perhaps just into the new year, but regardless, it is expected to come very soon. And from there, the rates are expected to rise steadily over the following year, well, over the following years. But having said that, it makes it sound terribly drastic, as if, we're going to be back into the teens of percent, but that is rising steadily to 1.25% by March 2026. So yes, it is steady, but it is very, very gradual. Hopefully that will mean some more positive news for the rate of interest receivable, but quite how that works out remains to be seen. Now, what is not a regular part of these reports is the section that you can find at paragraph 24, where there is reference to 2 points that have arisen during a recent peer review of the council. Now, the first relates to arranging treasury management training for members. Now, that is something that we do have it in, that this is something that should happen regularly. And so, yes, good point. And watch this space on that one. So over the coming 2 to 3 months, something will be arranged. Secondly, the investment policy was seen as being rather on the cautious side. Now, this one perhaps came slightly more as a surprise, because we would tend to see the investment policy as having been appropriately cautious rather than excessively cautious. So we have discussed this with our Treasury advisors, and really they were of the same view, that our policy is probably pitched at just about the right level. But that's not to say that there aren't things that we can look at. There is, we can look, for example, at the question of terms over 1 year. I'm not jumping the gun here or suggesting anything, but at the moment we are very cautious on that. We will only lend to another local authority for anything over a year. So perhaps we could look at extending that to certain financial institutions. As I say, I wouldn't wish to jump the gun on the outcome of any such consideration. But yes, it's something that we can take a look at. So then just 2 final points. No, there has been no external borrowing during the first half of the year, and it's not anticipated there will be any during the second half. There may be a borrowing requirement on the capital programme, but with the amount of cash that we have in hand, the likelihood is that that will be filled by internal borrowing. And the final point is just to confirm that in the first 6 months of the year, all of the prudential indicators were complied with and all counterparty limits were adhered to. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Tony. Thanks for that. Questions or comments from the committee? Councillor Bretherton.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on page 31, point 16. The point made about savings and interest payable may be achieved by delaying external borrowing or by using the council's cash balances as an alternative to taking external loans from the Public Work Loan Board. And I'm just wondering, when we talk about council's cash balances, are we referring to the monies on deposit, the nearly £60 million? And if the council was minded to use the council's cash balances, what sort of level will be considered safe? What sort of figures are we talking about in terms of using the council's cash balances instead of the Public Works Loan Board? Thank you.
Well, to the first, in terms of what's the pool of funds that we're talking about, yes, it is that figure that was 54 million during the first half of the year. In terms of a safe level, well, that very much depends on other plans, because there is, if you cross-refer to the statement of accounts, a key figure in there is the level of usable reserves. So our earmarked reserves, our general reserve, capital receipts, and quite a chunk of money in capital grants unapplied. So it then depends, well, how much of those grants are we planning to apply in the near future? How much of the reserves are we planning to run down in the near future? So if most of that money is going to be taken up with that, then that very much alters the calculation. So it would depend on the circumstances at the time. So yes, if we're not planning to spend out, then okay, we can delay the borrowing for a further 3 to 5 years. But if it's going to be spent anyway, it's not available. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for that. Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of hopefully quick queries for clarification. I'm looking at page 30 at paragraph 7, or the table 1, paragraph 7. There's some explanation in paragraph 8 about the DMO and the very low interest rate. But when you look at the totals in table 1 above it, about 40% of the total average daily investments were invested at the 0.01 rate, which is the lowest of all the rates that are shown in that table. I just wonder if you could give us a bit of further explanation as to how that percentage was so high. The other one I've got is on page 36, Appendix B. At the very top of that investment table, there was an investment of 5 million in Plymouth City Council at 0.25% in September. At that point in time, the limit within Goldman Sachs, who were offering 0.95%, 2 million, it would appear to me that 2 million of that 5 million that went to Plymouth could have gone to Goldman Sachs at a much preferable rate of interest. I just wondered if you had a comment on that. And finally, just in the interest of accuracy, at the bottom of page 36, 3 from the bottom, Helaba Bank there, the limit shown in that table is shown as 6 million, when in actual fact I believe it should be 4 million. It's actually shown as 4 million on page 38 and earlier in the report, but it threw me slightly for a little while when I saw that figure of 6 in there.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so I maybe work in reverse order if that's all right, because I've worked my way down the pages with you. First of all, yes, in the table, Helaba, yeah, you are quite right. That should say £4 million, and that is absolutely why there is only the £4 million. That is the limit for them. So yeah, I'm sorry, that is an error in the table. Then the page above and the question of Plymouth City Council and Goldman Sachs. Well, this is, yes, the placement with Goldman Sachs was a term deposit, is a term deposit. And so, yes, it would have been excellent if we could have placed that extra 2 million with them, but they quite simply were not looking for it at the time. So that when the 5 million came to be placed with Plymouth, the option to place it at 0.95 with Goldman Sachs, I'm afraid wasn't available. And then if we go to the table 1 and the question of the 0.01%, well, we're back to 2 factors. One is that while we have quite a lot of money in hand, even relative to where we would usually be, we have also been we have had to keep quite a lot of money at very, very short notice, which is what the money market funds do for us, and the DMO likewise. And the second factor is, again, the availability of investment opportunities, because the notice accounts, as you see there, they are maxed out. As much is on fixed term deposit as we could find meaningful opportunities. The money market funds versus debt management office, well, within the shading and the roundings, the money market funds you would find do come out very, very slightly ahead, but it is those 2 factors, lack of opportunity and the need to keep quite a high balance at very, very short notice.
So can you confirm, is that sort of percentage going to those two areas, is that likely to continue for the second 6 months of this financial year?
It will certainly continue into the second 6 months of the year. Now, I would certainly like to think that by the time we get into the tail end of the year, it may be changing, because yes, we have still had quite a lot of money going through relating to COVID-related grants, which, you know, the money comes in and the money goes out. So that, we believe, subject to future developments, is that is currently winding down. So the balance should start to redress itself by the end of the year. But of course, as with everything at the moment, it is very, very much watch this space.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Thanks very much. Any other questions from members of the committee? Members not on the committee, Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Chair. Tony, this is probably going to be a really straightforward answer, I hope, but it's been bugging me since I read the agenda. On page 35, you've got the investment counterparties, and it obviously gives the durations there, 3, 6 months or up to a year or 2 years on if it's a UK local authority, yeah. But on the very next page, on Appendix B, we're showing 2 notice accounts there that have been invested for 4 or 5 years, and I'm just wondering how that fits in with the strategy. Thanks, Chair.
Well, that is because that is simply a statement of fact that they have been there, but they are nonetheless available to us at very, very short notice. And so although they've been there a long time, throughout the whole of that period, we have been able to pull them out and it's a rolling thing. You know, it comes due and it rolls on. So yeah, it remains within the limit.
Councillor Foster.
Thanks. So it's doing a year, then it's been renewed. Is that what we're saying there? Because it does, to me, slightly stand out that it's outside of the policy guidelines, but we are actually going through that process, Tony, are we, of renewing it annually, because otherwise, clearly, it's not a maximum of 12 months or 2 years, is it?
Yeah, I would have to check just where this one is at this very moment, but I know we did have it in, you know, it was at the very most, it has been at 6 months notice. Now, at different times within the last, I will say, 18 plus months, we have at times actually had it on shorter notice than that. But at any one time, it will never be out for more than 6 months, and so remains within the limit.
Okay, is that all right, Councillor Foster? Thanks for that, Tony. Councillor Ogilvie, do you want to come back on that?
Just on that, the Santander one, according to this table, we're getting 0.4%. Have we been getting that since 2016? Are we getting that now?
That was the rate we were getting on the 30th of September. Yeah, it has varied either side of that, and I wouldn't, no, I would be guessing if I tried to put a rate on what it's at, as at today.
It's a very attractive rate based on others at the moment.
Gary?
It might be better, Tony, if we put the rollover date on as well, maybe. I think that would clarify it. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Smith?
It's just a comment more than a question, Mr. Chairman, regarding the comments from the peer review. I think as time has gone on from years ago when we had all the problems with Iceland and all that, we did obviously take a much more cautious view of how we should invest or where we should invest. I think we've all learnt from that particular time, but times are different now, and maybe we should be thinking a bit more outside the box and looking to be a little less risk averse and seeing if we can make better use. It's an awful lot of money that is slushing around in the bank accounts and bringing very little money in. So maybe there is some room for manoeuvre in the future.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. I think you probably covered that in your comments before. Tony, do you want to come back on that?
Well, just to confirm, Chair, that yes, this is something that we can look at now. As I mean, we are getting close now to the time when the Treasury Management Statement for 22-23 is going to be prepared, including the investment policy. So yes, very definitely, this is something we can have a look at within that.
Thanks very much. Well, let's do that.
Sure. The report's quite clear that it says as part of the 22-23 budget setting process that will be reviewed. So it's an action to take forward. So it will be done.
Excellent. Yeah. In hand. Thanks very much. Okay. Any other questions or comments, members of the committee? Not on the committee? No. Okay. Thanks very much, Tony. The items to note, so we don't need a vote on that. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Stay safe. See you again soon.
Yeah.